Okay. Welcome to the latest Neighbourhood Plan meeting, and I was thinking what I felt like today as I was writing the 1,500 words on the Alkin Coates walls, and I decided that I feel like the bell has just rung in the 10,000 metres, and we all just need to power to the end and do that last 400 metres, even though we might not want to do it. May I welcome Jerry, who is looking exceptionally well, if you don't mind me saying so. And it's lovely to see you. I didn't expect to see you. Do we have any apologies? Oh dear. And we don't know about Liz, whether she's in Wales, en route to Wales. We don't know anything about it. I'll just look at my phone. No, nothing. Okay. Declarations of interest? No. Minutes of the last meeting? Anybody would like to propose them and second them? And all those in favour? Okay, public forum. There is an array of empty chairs. And I think Richard Thorley is on holiday. So even if he was fascinated, he is another reason not to be here. So moving on to item 6, which is, if you remember, the landscape assessment. And you remember that we'd almost got this right, but we just wanted to review the cones on the maps rather than the arrows. And this was the suggestion of Paul Foxley, who has seen these kinds of things before, whereas the rest of them haven't, the rest of us haven't. And I do agree, it does look clearer to me. What do you think, Paul?
Yes, Chair, I would agree. I think that's significantly clearer and about as good as we could expect. I mean, these things are always open to some interpretation, so yeah.
Okay. So, anybody else like to discuss the landscape assessment, or are we in a position that we can actually sign this off formally? And then if you remember, those of you that were at full council on Tuesday, I was thinking about the approval, Michael doesn't know this, I was thinking about the approval by the full council. And David was very enthusiastically saying, I think we might get sign off for the whole thing before Christmas. And I was saying, do you know what? I don't think we will. But then it struck me that actually, if we were to send all the documents with a fortnight to full council, we would depress all the other councillors. So I've discussed it with Gina today, and we've decided to do a drip thing. And I don't know whether we perhaps start with this one, because if they see all the evidence base first, as we move towards the actual main report, it'll all make much more sense, and they won't be as tempted to sort of skip over the detail, because we absolutely want everybody to say, oh, that's the wrong map, or that's the wrong reference, or that's the wrong road, or whatever. And although we've all been through it in this room, sharp eyes see other things. So perhaps we sign this off.
Jenny's
joining us. Hello, Jenny. Paul was just saying he's much happier with the new maps, and we all feel that they're more self-explanatory. So we were just saying that we didn't really have anything more to say about this beyond signing it off, I think. You have anything to say about it, Jenny? Oh.
Sorry, I didn't have the sound on, but I just heard the crucial bit, which was you seem to be happy with the maps as they've been provided in the report as a whole. So I'm incredibly pleased. So thank you very much.
Excellent.
It has been great to work with you. I'm sorry we had that bit of a blip around the maps, but I'm really thankful that we got
Don't worry, we're not furious in any way. We would be furious if you were the last report, but you're absolutely not. So don't worry. It's a lovely feeling that we have got something ticked off. It's not the first one. We did one at the last meeting. It's another thing ticked off, and we're ready to share this with the other councillors that aren't on this advisory committee, but are, of course, Cone councillors, so should really be interested in all of these views and this report. So thank you very much. Has anybody else got anything to add for Jenny? No? Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 7, Combe Town Centre boundary change in the Pendle local plan. So you all will have seen that John Holton wrote us a letter, and I read it and thought, oh my goodness, this looks worrying. I don't know what to do about this. So I rang Michael and said, I'm a bit concerned, what should we do? And he said, oh, don't be concerned. Go on.
Thank you. The reason I suggest not to be overly concerned by this is I think the original letter, it strikes me that it implies that by having the areas in question within the town centre boundary in some way exposes you to the possibility of out of or edge of centre retail and leisure developments that could threaten the wider Combe Town centre. And to be honest, I really don't think they do. I've looked at again. I looked at them last week. I've looked at them again today. They're all relatively small areas. The boundary that we defined way back in 2019, I think it was, is quite narrowly defined. So of themselves, I don't think the sites pose a great threat to the centre if they were to be redeveloped. And if they were to be redeveloped for town centre uses, would that be a problem? My opinion is it wouldn't. So for example, you know, if you took, say, the leisure centre, if that was to be redeveloped for another leisure centre, another leisure use, is that an issue? I don't think it is. Is that site better within the town centre? Again, my view is it is. You probably wouldn't want to lose that.
Because it's adjacent to the railway station.
And then the threat of edge of centre, again, I simply don't think it's there. I don't think there's any, but I think my view is the days of big box, what we so call retail, which was sort of the 80s and the 90s, I no longer think is there. I think you see retrenchment even on some of the larger supermarkets such as Tesco. So I think on balance, the boundary that we drew way back in 2019 is the right one. And there's at least 2 of you on the committee. We actually did walk the boundary, you know, and there were things that weren't in that we added in. A couple of those are on John's list. So I'm reasonably comfortable that that boundary is fit for purpose and sustainable, and I don't think it poses a threat to the wider centre. You know, I'm happy to field questions on some of the detailed issues, but as a general principle, I don't think the boundary is wrong, nor do I think it poses a long-term threat.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I mean, I agree that I don't see there being a particular concern. I don't have a particular concern about those areas staying in the boundary. But I think it would be useful if I could ask Michael to just sort of outline what the benefits would be of you know, what we achieve by including them within the boundary. What are I'm struggling to actually remember exactly what our motives were, but I do remember very clearly the walk round and it being a very logical process that we went through to those areas being added in. So if I'm not putting Michael too much on the spot, I wondered if he could just give a bit of an outline of what, you know, the pluses are of them being in the town centre boundary.
The pluses, if we look at them as site specifics, the pluses are that the sites that are being questioned are largely town centre uses themselves anyway, or if they're not town centre uses, they are key uses that underpin the performance of the town centre, such as the rail station. Yeah. So there's the use issue. Then, in terms of some of the other areas, the areas that's been sort of questioned at the top end of Colne around Craddock Street, Colne Lane, and the area then at the opposite end of the town centre, west of the A56 and Bridge Street. I think largely the rationale for including those sorts of areas was that they're sort of an older mix of uses, and that if those sort of areas are included within the town centre, then it's an opportunity over time to look possibly at gateway improvements or more comprehensive regeneration. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the uses that are there now. It's just that it gives you that scope, and they would benefit from the neighbourhood plans, town centre policies. I don't know if there's anything specific in the successful levelling up proposal, because all I've seen is very sketchy on that. But obviously, if it's within the centre, these sites can benefit from things such as that. So I think it's largely twofold. I think there's questions about the car parks, but again, why exclude car parks from the town centre? A fundamental thing that helps underpin town centres.
You wouldn't have car parks not in the town centre,
Yeah.
really, would you?
So I didn't really understand the rationale, and even when it comes to the details, I don't really see that there's anything fundamentally wrong, as I said before, with what we previously defined. So I'm comfortable to defend that, and obviously after this meeting, Pendle will need a formal response to actually draft something that formalises that and spells out these are the reasons why. If you decide this committee has decided they remain within the town centre boundary.
David?
Yeah, I think in John Holden's paper, there's only really one negative highlighted, which is the sequential test aspect to it. So if one of these sites is included in the town centre and it gets redeveloped into something that we think might compete with something that we all know and love in a different part of the town centre, then obviously it couldn't be considered as detracting from it. Now, obviously we had that topic came up with the petrol station at the end of the motorway, and was that a sequential test issue? And obviously Pendle said it wasn't, but we all thought it was.
You know about
just
this?
a topical one, that was all.
Okay, all right. So, who should write this letter? Should it be Gina? Should it be you?
I'm happy to draft something, but I do think it should come from the town council as a formal response to
Is everybody
Pendle's
happy
request.
with that? Yeah? Okay, marvellous. All right, moving on. Item 8, Cone Design Code. I'd like to thank you all for all of your pernickety, some of them overlapping, which is actually positive that we're spotting some of the same things. Little changes. May I ask, did you photograph the bank?
Didn't have a chance today.
I keep coming in the dark as well, it's nearly always dark.
I know, it was dark and it was wet.
So that's a small thing. That's a small thing. So I keep coming into Cone and either forgetting to photograph rusticated or dressed stone, and or coming in the dark. So because we added some things, if you remember, well perhaps you don't remember because we did it before you saw it, we added some things to the material palette. Westmoreland stone, dressed stone, I can't remember what else there was, and we provided pictures, and interestingly I didn't find any sensible pictures on the internet, So I kept meaning to photograph it. Does anybody have any, you can see Brian? No? No? Does anybody have any sort of general thoughts they'd like to share? We haven't got the way with us, have we?
I have texted him. I had to estimate when we would get to this item.
Oh, okay.
I overestimated. It's been quite speedy so far.
Oh.
So, yes.
Right.
I have texted him though to say that
Okay.
we're ready. So.
Well, perhaps what we should do, because I think we'd benefit if we're going to have a discussion about it with him being here. So perhaps what we should do is sort of park it, not finish item 8, just keep item 8 in the background, and move on to where we don't have an expert, which is the viability report. So the viability report, I spoke to Dave Chapman this morning. Tomorrow it's his mother's funeral, and the funeral is on the Isle of Wight, and he's travelling over and meeting his siblings tonight. He actually had a debate about whether to dump the siblings and come to this meeting, which is very laudable, and I don't worry. I read it quickly when I first got it, and I read it thoroughly today, and there were interesting points, but if you read his letter, he's not wholly pleased with it. I think it takes us so far, but it doesn't take us far enough. And so from the conversation that we had this morning, he would like to come virtually to a meeting, and we have a meeting simply on viability and nothing else, and we discuss all the whys and the wherefores of taking it to that next step, because he thinks it's valuable to do so, and he's the expert. If he thinks it's valuable to do so, then we absolutely should, in my opinion. From my perusal this afternoon, I just saw a few things that I would like to change as a non-expert. Perhaps, Gina, you could make a note of these. Page 9, the report says that we are putting forward 27 sites, but we aren't now, are we? So that needs changing. And page 22, the first table is all about all the homes that sold over 2 years, but the incorrect title is on it. It says it's for new homes, and that's not true. That's later on that page. So it's all homes of the first table of page 22. And page 33, it was talking about the cost of marketing per site as 4.5%, and then noted that Pendle, it wasn't as much, it was about 2%. This is page 33. And then it sort of discounts the fact that we would, in Cone, have cheaper marketing costs because none of our homes are sort of affordable housing on our sites. But that's not true, because we all know that Pearl operates a lot of sites, for example, Harrison Drive, that was on an earlier iteration of our plan in 2018, and they are social housing providers, Pearl together. So therefore, these sites are social housing, therefore the marketing costs are bound to be less. So I would say that the marketing costs are not 4.5%, as stated nationally, but the lower 2%, and that obviously helps our viability just a little bit, but all of these things add up. Okay, and if it is way, we can just finish this item. Does anybody else have any thoughts about the viability? Dave said he is free from next week. Gina said that we have to have so many clear days to give a meeting. I said I'm really motivated to have this meeting, and I have an awful lot of evenings now taken up. I know that some of you work, but perhaps we could have an online meeting, because he himself is online, and it's only about one topic, so I don't think it would be more than an hour. I think it would be less. So Gina, do you have any dates when you would like to put forward for this meeting on viability? And we'll just look at a spread of them and send them to Dave.
I mean, do you have any evenings free at all, Sarah? Because really,
When are we looking from? What dates do you want me to start looking from?
the earliest we can do is next Wednesday the 24th.
Yes. Well, I don't have next Wednesday and I don't have next Thursday.
But then we've got Michael can attend Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday the following week, so 29th, 30th.
Oh, I can do Monday the 29th. And evening of Tuesday the 30th. And oh gosh, Wednesday the 1st. Having just said that I couldn't do all of these days. So
suggest we pick one of those.
How is everyone else fixed for those spread of days? I think we can look at this time.
Probably
This
similar,
6:30
half-6.
So 29th and 30th looking favourite. Okay,
So
30th. So let's
Or the Wednesday.
we need to have a backup position. Paul can't do the Wednesday. And then I get into all of my meetings then. Yes, I've got meetings then for weeks. Paul, please forgive us. Could we have Wednesday as the backup? Yeah, and if if you've got any sort of burning viability thoughts, please share them with us. But we'll try for the Tuesday. And if you could email Dave, and we can try and get that in the diary, and it will just be about this one thing. So the agenda will just be viability. Just be viability. Okay. Is Way with us?
Don't think he's the one yet.
No.
Could I just ask a couple of questions about the viability?
Go on, do.
Because it was, I've jumped straight into it onto the numbers bit.
Okay.
Because that's always most exciting. I'm guessing, obviously, the
Only
page.
you would say that was most
I know.
exciting.
The page that has all the assumptions on it,
Yes.
like a developer's profit of 18%.
Yes.
They're all very precise, and
They
obviously we need to benchmark those against our knowledge. So perhaps someone in the building industry might have a look at page 38.
18%, 20% is correct.
Yeah.
But that's what the MPPF wants us to have as well.
Well, exactly. But I thought it was very odd because they picked 3 sites. One of them is Cottontree, and 2 of them are quite small and sort of, terraced, as it were, or small. And obviously, I thought the Cottontree one would be superb. That's one of our favourite ones, isn't it? That's one of our leading lights. But it actually comes in as the worst of the 3.
But you're just being biased about the fact it's in our ward, but essentially it is beset with all the flooding issues.
I know. But it
part of the site.
Yeah, I know.
But it's one of those ones. If you look at the rationale he's got, if you look at it, it says obviously 2 of them are quite marginal, and one of them is a clear cut one. But the clear cut one is the smallest one. And a small brownfield site, we were always told by Pendle it was an absolute no-go.
Yes.
It was cost a fortune to do everything.
Yes.
And therefore you never get the money back, etc., etc. And it's obviously come up with a screamingly positive headline.
You wonder why anybody builds those houses on grand designs if they're so awful.
It seems like, though, in some of the logic he applies, it's obviously you make selective choices about what you want for a benchmark land value. And you say it's brownfield, therefore you aim at the lower end of it. So lo and behold, you're already lowering the benchmark target there.
Yes.
So therefore, if you come in slightly above, you're suddenly well above.
Did you see the heat map? I thought the heat map was fascinating.
It's fairly chilly across
It
Arsenal.
was very chilly.
Yeah.
It was chilly. All the way to Briarfield.
But obviously
We're in the cold.
Just looks like the normal weather map, really. But yeah, it was all sunny in the hillsides and sort of icy cold in the middle, yeah. But I thought it was interesting in terms of that. So it'd be good to understand some of the dynamics and some of the choices.
Yes.
And how much of those are real world choices.
I know.
If I'm a developer, I'm going to argue it the other way, aren't I?
Yeah, I looked at all the prices and it really interested me because I'm a nerd on these things going, oh, who'd have known? But then every sort of 4th page they wrote, this is very broad brush, this is very, there could be a great deal of margin of variability here. They kept giving themselves let-outs all the time, didn't they? Because of course it isn't precise.
Yeah.
What did you think, Michael?
I thought in terms of the ACON report, I thought it was reasonable with a reasonable set of assumptions. I've no axe to grind against it at all.
Okay.
You know,
Dave was very disappointed.
it's the second time they've had a go. Pendle have had two variations of the same thing, and they're all coming out with the same results. So, you know,
Okay.
I don't really think, you know, I'll be interested in what Dave Chapman thinks he can come up with, but, you know, my view is the reports we've seen are all based on reasonable assumptions.
Okay. Well, he was underwhelmed to the point whereby ACOM's now been sacked from this work package. So,
about how it feeds into our overall plan and our overall targets and our overall sites. It looks like, therefore, that all of our sites are going to look marginal or positive in terms of viability. And obviously then convincing people that are reviewing it, Pendle, the inspector, etc.,
Yes.
is something we have to achieve from that. I notice in the Pendle Local Plan Part 2 latest iteration, coming to P&R next week, that their target of 240 gives us a target left of 12 for the next 9 years.
and we had 6 on Tuesday for the flats by Craddock Road.
Yeah, Mary's Furniture Place.
If we,
Yeah.
oh, no, I wasn't counting that.
Oh, no, the other one.
The other
Yeah.
ones. In fact, this week, Ben, we could have a target of 0.
And if you work through the maths as well, and you say, what if the target was 142, which is the standard methodology figure, then your target actually for the whole of Pendle is minus 442. So, as I always joke with these things, you can go around knocking houses down we don't like now.
I think that would upset the residents, so I don't think we'll do that. Nor do we have the powers as the town council.
So the only reason I'm asking is, obviously we've got our set of sites and we've got the evidence now, or getting the evidence to support them all. We'll have far and above what we actually need
Yes.
for the plan period. There is talk about potentially extending Pendle's plan period. That's
Yes.
an issue that's up in the air.
Yes.
And obviously our main plan, the old version, has all these tables in with all the, you know, targets across the area and that sort of thing.
Pendle's now looking at going to 2045, isn't it?
Or 15 years from now.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's 15 years duration in total.
Oh, I thought it wasn't.
No, it's not
Okay.
15 years on top of.
Oh.
No,
Oh.
that would lead to a gigantic target generally.
Right.
But I think at what stage we update the numbers in our main body is something we have to think about. And there's options, I think, at this stage. So
I think it would be helpful for us all if Gina could share that list that we've got, which is our preferred sites that are left, because of course we took one out a couple of meetings ago. That would be helpful to remind us all. And we also need to consider what we're going to do about Pendle, because we've written to Pendle. Okay, we'll just finish this item. So we've written to Pendle loads of times, haven't we? And they have not said that they are willing to develop their sites.
Or the Bunkers Hill one, or the other ones.
No, so LCC are able to do that, and for some reason Pendle Council can't or won't do that. And I think we need to discuss that and what to do.
Well, let's march into Messrs Watson and Holton's office.
We've not had a single response. And how many times have you written? Loads? 6 or 7 times.
Well, we'll escalate it then, should we?
I mean, Neil Watson just said, well, it'll have to come to P&R. We'll bring it to P&R then, frankly.
Yeah,
You know, actually, what's stopping you? I know it's just so wearing.
Well, let's broaden the agenda item next Thursday then. If we're talking about the local plan, why don't we talk about the housing sites within the local
Yeah,
plan?
that they own.
Exactly. Yeah,
Because you think they'd be the easiest ones.
makes sense.
Well, not being funny though, you guys are in charge now, aren't you?
Stop it. So,
As we all know, Johnny, officers do what they like.
okay. Well, we will continue to push for Pendle because, of course, that is several of our sites, isn't it? And we will try tomorrow, please, to write to. I know no, I think it's pointless. I think we try to push to get it onto the P&R agenda, and I think that if you could write, not necessarily tomorrow actually, because of course we know that Dave's at his mother's funeral, but on Monday, if you could write and say, right, we're looking at the 30th, please let us know. And then we get that in the diary and we deal with how we're taking this forward. So that's it on viability, yes? Yeah,
Chair, can I have a little word?
of course.
Thank you very much. Two things. Page 9112, the word conduced should be conducted.
Well done.
In the conclusions that David was just talking about, both the first and the second sites, it's inferred that they could both have an increased density, which would
Yes.
surely improve the viability.
Yes. It is more than inferred, it is stated, and I think that any inspector would look at that and said that we've been conservative on the 30 houses per hectare or whatever it was that was chosen. And perhaps that's something we can ask Dave Chapman, you know, in terms of making the viabilities better, whether these are urban locations, they're not suburban locations, whether it would be appropriate to go for more than 30 dwellings per hectare. Perhaps Gina could prompt us on the 30th with that question, in case we forget, because it's good. Okay, so if everybody's happy, we'll move back to item 8, which is the design code. Welcome, Way. You got all of our little pernickety changes. I hope you weren't too irritated by them, but it showed that we really read your report and thought about it and tried to stand back off it. Do you have anything to say to us?
Okay, let me unmute. Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, thank you very much for your comments. We read through of those and starting make those changes and updating. I think most of them make sense and we are in good progress. First of all, let me answer the question of the latest email. I think I can't remember. Maybe Gina asked for we updated, get the final draft as soon as possible, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I think if after we clarify probably just the minor things tonight, I'll try my best to get back to you next week. Is that okay? Because I'm not working tomorrow.
All right. In fact, then, having just boasted that the only thing on the agenda on the 30th might be viability, perhaps what we should do is add the final report so that we all read it one more time, and then we put it in this pile here, which is the list with pile, because that, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, so next week, yeah, before 25th, before 25th, so I can get the final draft back to you, and then you can read. Yeah, and you can read it, and then further final comments. I can.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
so we're hoping to meet on the 30th. So if you make sure that we have it a few days before, we'll all read it again and just be clear with it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that next week. So I think can I just ignore? Not ignore. Can I just not discuss those comments in detail because they are quite make sense, quite straightforward. The only one thing not quite clear to me is the page 58. The material palette.
Yes.
Because I understand probably you are not satisfied with some images or some
yes. Well, don't worry. We actually discussed this before you came on the call, because your dressed or rusticated stone isn't what I intended at all. And Gina is going tomorrow to take a picture of the back next to the town hall, and she will send you, perhaps not in sun like this picture, more in drizzle, a picture of exactly what we intend.
Okay, that's brilliant. So if you can, yeah, if as soon as she sent me, so I can post this page.
Actually, Gina, as well, just because I'm a terrible purist and appalling, if you could take like a terraced house, that kind of stone, but without that horrible cement pointing, that's sort of just distressing me. Or I could take a picture of my mother's cottage and send it to you, because I don't think we want to be promoting that pointing in our neighbourhood plan.
That if you can do that as well, that's probably going to be
Okay,
better, because
I'll do that.
they're going to have to.
David, do you think you could make me do that tomorrow? Yeah. Okay, so we'll send you 2 new images. We'll send you my mother's cottage with line pointing, and we'll send you new dressed and rusticated stone.
Okay, that's brilliant. Apart
In
from
fact,
that,
the stone flags, I'm sorry, but now I'm really looking at it again. They're not like our stone flags, are they? They're not like our pavements. Now, weirdly, we already have pictures of these because I took them for our heritage streets and the non-designated heritage assets. So I could send you a stretch of pavement.
okay,
So we'll send you 3 pictures.
okay,
We'll send you new stone flags. We'll send you
can I-
new sandstone and new dressed and rusticated stone.
okay, okay.
Can I just add there that the sets, we don't have granite sets.
No, we don't have granite sets.
They're
But
millstone, grit, sandstone.
I have a picture of that as well, because I did that for the heritage streets. It's quite a list now.
So
David
it's
sent-
just, the label needs to be right. that's
Yeah,
all.
and actually,
Can I just
now we're
ask,
looking at it, I'm now thinking that the Westmoreland slate, what I'd like to see is the graduated Westmoreland slate. Do you know what I mean, Paul? Because that's the specialness of the Westmoreland slate that we have here, with the massive slates on the bottom and we have it on this town hall, don't we? So that's what I'd like to see in the Westmoreland slate as well. Sorry, you've opened a real can of worms on this material palette here, Way. I think it's just because some of these things are not cone things. Obviously, the market
Yeah,
is.
probably not typical. Or
No, the market
understand.
is.
Can I just ask about the plain tiles? Because the image of that's labelled plain tiles, they are red tiles, but those aren't plain tiles in as much as they're a profile tile. Technically, a plain tile is flat. So I think it's important that we just get the terminology right. And
okay.
was the intention to show plain tiles, i.e. flat tiles, like I've got on
They're
my
all those
house?
pan tiles, aren't they? These.
Well, yes, those are concrete,
You see those in East Yorkshire.
profiled concrete tiles, and there are properties with those on in Colne. It depends what the intent was. There are quite a lot of older properties that have plain tiles on, albeit a very diminishing number nowadays. They tend to get replaced with horrible concrete things. So what are we trying to say is what I'm really driving at. Are we trying to promote profile concrete tiles, yuck, or are we saying, I don't know what we're saying. I know this is saying that none of this is prescriptive,
No.
but obviously as soon as you give examples, the implication is that those examples are acceptable. So I'm just kind of questioning what's our message that we're trying to give.
And if you look at, say, new housing developments that aren't in conservation areas, say the one on Red Lane, which I'm not a fan of, to be honest with you, but if you look at that housing development there, which is a typical housing development, the roofs are of that Spanish slate. You know, I don't like that either. It's that shiny, do you know what I mean? It looks like it's been made by a robot.
Well, it does on day one anyway, yeah.
Do you think it gets better?
Well, it gets better than a lot of concrete tiles.
Okay, so wait, give us a steer here. Should
Yeah.
we be going shiny Spanish slate instead of the concrete tiles? Should we be going Edwardian red tiles that you see on some suburban houses in Cone? Or should we be going on something that we don't much like, but we do see as replacement roofs on Victorian terraces?
It's really up to you, to be honest, because you imagine this design code report going to be read by those future potential developers. They will use this, you know. So it's really what you want to say here. What kind of materials you prefer to present here, and as you said, indication, suggestion, kind of suggestion.
Well, in that case, I think, looking at Paul and looking at the rest of you, we prefer the shiny Spanish slate on the modern houses on Red Lane than the concrete tiles. And let's be honest, that if you're an existing homeowner and you replace your roof, that's permitted development anyway, even in a conservation area, and there's nothing we can do about it. But if you're a developer who's reading this plan, you might be thinking, oh, well, there's a few bob to be saved here. I'll put on these concrete tiles that they think's okay.
I'm just thinking, which way is the best? Maybe even you can discuss further this in the following couple of days, and then because there are maybe about 12, you know, circles indicating those materials you prefer to be used in Cologne area. Maybe you can discuss and send me a list with an image. Clearly say this is what you want, and I just put it here. I think that works better to you.
All right. Well, just going through it then quickly. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Is this document going to dictate how new developments is it going to dictate what materials are compulsory on new developments in Cone?
I don't think we could use the word compulsory, but it would certainly steer new developments depending on where they are in Cone, because if you read the whole thing, there isn't like a golden bullet for it all has to be like this here in this location. This location over here will be treated differently. So there are all of those sub-locations where other things are desirable, i.e. it's different in the countryside as it is in the centre of town, as it is on a new estate, as it is in established suburbia.
Yeah, the reason I asked the question is because if we are dictating to developers, you must use stone, natural products.
We're not dictating. No, there's render here. And there's brick.
Yeah, if I just finish on what I was saying, it might affect the viability going forward.
That's true.
Because if it suddenly becomes really expensive to build 40 houses because they have to be built in a adopted design code.
Yeah.
It might scare a lot of people off, or they say, well, we can build it there in your natural products, but the end user has got to foot the bill.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people in Cone wouldn't be able to afford that.
I think.
And the other question was, there's a sentence in this material palettes page which says, Cone's existing local character and material palette is generally predominated by bricks and clay roofs.
Well, we've changed that though, didn't we?
Yeah, we will change that.
Right.
We did change that.
So I was going to say it's predominantly stone.
And slate.
Yeah.
And slate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I changed that already.
We have changed that. Right. I think what I do this weekend is I drive to Red Lane, take a picture of those roofs, possibly go and take a picture of some red tile roofs in sort of Edwardian suburbia, send the picture of the stone sets that we have and the stone flags that we have, send the real stone with the lime, send the dress stone. But I think a lot of our new housing, as well as render, which we do have, and I think I'll take another picture, and I'll take a picture perhaps from the lower rough, where you've got render that abuts artificial stone. Because that is a mix that we have and would be acceptable in some locations. And so we've got to have artificial stone on this page, haven't we? I think that's a lot of new houses are built of that. And then with the brick ones, what I'll do is I'll drive to the old grammar school where there are those new houses there, because there's very little brick in Cone, and I'll take a picture of those. Here's another question, and I'll find a graduated Westmoreland roof. And I think I'll probably use the legit cottages instead of that sandstone that's down at the bottom. So, glass curtain. Where do we have glass curtain in Cone? Is that a thing?
Well, I think that's, in my comments, I mentioned that that's not a correct description of what that photograph is. That photograph is a leaded light window, which we have plenty of in all the buildings. Do you mind? Sorry. Yeah, that photograph is of a leaded light, not of curtain glazing, and you know whether that was meant to mean curtain walling was my comment.
But we do have an awful lot of leaded lights, especially in
we have on older buildings. Whether I can't really see why we would be advocating that as a material to be common on new buildings.
Well, perhaps what we do is we replace that one with the artificial stone that I'll find on, say, the Lower Rough or in Red Lane. Should we change that to artificial stone?
I mean, what does Michael think? Should we be saying anything about windows? What does Way think? Should we have something that says something about a window material?
Normally you could have some materials for roof, so for walls, for windows, and even maybe for door walls, fence, that kind of thing. If you can cover that, that will be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that, with Paul there. There's not a lot of the new houses now, they don't have a lot of glass really, do they?
No.
Per se, particularly LED lights, that's like an Edwardian back to medieval times, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I think we should replace that with artificial.
Yeah, okay.
Because all those, the new builds up at the Persimmon near Notts Drive where I used to live, that's artificial stone. And there's quite a lot up there.
It's the standard that's not in a conservation area, isn't it, round here?
Yeah. I'll tell you where there's quite a few brick houses on Faverdale Road.
That's true.
Edwardian sort of original brick.
Faverdale, yeah, that's true.
Noreye, Accrington brick.
You're very welcome to come to my house, Sarah, because we're Victorian, late Victorian, and it's Accrington brick and flat tiles.
Excellent. Well, I'll come and see you. I'll definitely come and see you. And I'm just annotating this page now because there's loads happening. What about the windows? Do we have to add the windows? Is that a thing that we would do a series of different window styles? Because in older parts of Cone, we've got, say, the back of my house, and we have it throughout Cone, which is mullion windows with, and in fact, there's some in Trawden, isn't there? They're new houses where they've got mullion windows and wooden frames. Do we show a series of different window types that are predominant in Cone? Yeah, we've got sashes, we've got modern windows, we've got mullion windows. Do we show those?
If you want some of these types of windows to be used in the future developments, maybe you can add that.
I think so. Would you agree with me that we've got mullion windows, which are casement windows, we've got sash windows, and then we've got sort of, I don't know. Well, we have to pick UPVC if we're picking artificial stone. It's correct for certain locations, isn't it?
So in a way, sorry. Oh, go on.
I think we need to be careful here that we don't just illustrate and list every single material that exists in Colne. What we're trying to do is steer surely. And Jonathan's absolutely right about the, you know, the cost implication of all of this, and the viability implications. So we shouldn't just be looking at, you know, the Westmoreland slate and, you know, dressed stone and stone surround when, you know, we'll never build anything in Colne again. But we need to reflect that mix, I think, but surely just give a flavour of the kind of things which we consider would be acceptable, not try and cover every single thing that might be acceptable in every single location, because I've just looked on Google Maps of the rooftops of Colne, for example, and there are very few red roofs in Colne.
So do we just go with slate?
But there are some, but I would say that the majority of those that there are not profiled red tiles, they're flat red tiles.
They're flat ones, yeah.
So you've got Harrison Drive, is where probably most of them are. Then you've got some on Keighley Road, Sheridan Road, half of Sheridan Road's red roofs, the other half of Sheridan Road that was built, let's get this right, earlier, is darker roofs, grey roofs. So there's an odd mix, but not, if you look down on Colne, there aren't many red roofs. Do we even bother to include that? You know, it may be that we're giving out a kind of exaggerated message about red roofs in Colne. In those areas where red roofs exist, obviously there'd be a good argument to include buildings with red roofs.
Like, say,
but you wouldn't want, frankly, red roofs in the middle of Colne.
Okay.
Why on earth would you?
Well, I think I see a solution, which is we take away the so-called glass curtain, we add in some different window styles, both old and new, and we change all the pictures. You see I've made annotations. And then we just create a really simple matrices, sort of matrix of the different areas. So we'd have, I don't know, conservation area, old heritage, and then the material palette that's appropriate there, new development, suburban, and the material palette that's appropriate there, conservation area, whatever. They're all numbered in the report. And then if we number all of these, then it's really clear to see which bits are appropriate where.
Yes, I'm slightly nervous that may end up being rather over-prescriptive, and that's my nervousness about a design code.
As long as we don't say natural stone everywhere, or as long as we're not too harsh.
After you add the materials you wish to have in the future development here, you can add a sentence or paragraph on this page. You can say what you want to say.
I mean, won't a lot of the things be dictated by planning policy anyway?
No, the point about
for example, I live in a brand new house, but it's got a slate roof, mullion windows, stone, because it's classed as open countryside there. And won't that planning definition override sort of like what we're saying here?
We can't conflict with the Pendle design. Not that they have a design code, because they don't. We can't conflict with everything that's in the core strategy. We have to agree with it. What we're trying to do here is apply extra detail that would be used as an extra information every time. For example, if your estate was being built, they'd look at the core strategy, they'd look at the MPPF, they'd look at the core strategy, and then they'd get out our design code and just check to see whether we've added extra information that you know, say we've put, yeah, so say we've put that must have a bat box, say we put a bat box must be included and Pendle haven't, then, you know, oh, page 22, Jonathan's house must have a bat box, there it is. So it's the extra detail that we're adding, but it mustn't conflict with Pendle.
Right, just to speed it along, I agree with Paul. Let's get shut of anything to do with red tiles.
Okay.
Because the properties that Paul has described there, Harrison Drive, Sheridan Road, were probably built in an era around the same time, 1930s, where perhaps red tiles were in the fashion.
Yeah.
So I think we should get rid of any reference to red tiles.
Okay, no red tiles.
Stick to grey, because 90% of it's grey.
So
Slate.
I'll go for the Spanish slate.
Well, I don't think you need to even need to say Spanish.
Well, I don't know. You see, the thing is, what I'm saying is, the slate they use on modern estates is not the same as, say, I don't know, they would use if there was a building site next to this town hall.
This is probably Welsh, isn't it?
No, it's Westmoreland.
I think we are in danger of getting in too deeper detail, surely.
Okay.
I think, you know, there's a illustration on here that says grey slate, and for this, you know, for the size of the illustration, I think, you know, the quality of that slate comes down to, you know, a planning officer approving materials on an individual case-by-case basis, and that surely is the thing that brings in the, you know, the appropriateness of the quality and so on. If it's in a conservation area, it'd be a different case than if it's, you know, on a modern estate somewhere to that extent. But we are still portraying that we prefer grey slate to red tile, for example, if we're taking that out.
Okay, so just going through the materials palette, just for the, you know, just going through it. So we've got coursed stone, we've got render, we've got slate, either type, we've got our kind of stone paving flags, we've got red brick, we've got our kind of sets, we've got graduated Westmoreland slate, we've got rubble stone, we've got artificial stone, we've got metal roofing, and we've got dressed or rusticated stone, plus in addition, 3 sorts of window types. Yeah? So we're taking some out and put some in.
Yeah, okay.
And then if we read the paragraph at the top, we make sure, as it already makes out about being not too prescriptive, etc. So I think it's sort of heading that way anyway.
Yes. I think it is right that we put artificial stone in, and I think it is right that we put UPVC in, because they are right in certain locations, just like they're wrong in certain locations. Yeah? Everybody happy with that page? Yeah? Trying to take this home with me. Okay. Are there any other extra things? Go on.
I'm going to just be a pain here.
No, don't.
I had a comment about the first paragraph of the bit on the blue background so top right paragraph.
Are we on the same page?
On the same page, I'm afraid, yeah.
Okay.
We haven't got off this page.
It's funny because this is the page I changed the most already.
Yeah. So I had a concern about this paragraph because now I stand
Are we
to
on the top paragraph?
Yeah, I stand to be corrected, but the way it reads to me is it reads as if anyone submitting a contemporary architectural proposal is going to be given a harder time when it comes to approval of material palette than somebody who slaps in the usual, dare I say, faux traditional sort of garbage that we tend to get. I'm being a bit harsh, but yeah, it could be any old thing as long as it's pretending to be something old. But as soon as you put in something contemporary, it's going to be more heavily scrutinised, is the way that reads.
Okay.
Because if you're going for contemporary, it's fine as long as it's providing high quality design is achieved, and it's sympathetic to existing built fabric, and it must be well evaluated. Well, my comment would be, well, surely we want every scheme to be well evaluated, not
Yes.
just contemporary designs.
You know what I think here? I think that paragraph reads perfectly well if there is a balancing paragraph. So if there's another paragraph that says, in conservation areas where traditional designs are trying to be designed or built, for example, the Lower Rough conservation area, then we would expect not to see pastiche, not to see windows set right at the front of the reveals, details to be carefully considered within that context. And if there was a paragraph that mirrored the contemporary design, then it wouldn't look like it was in any way picking on contemporary design, and that we considered both types. So, for example, at the Lower Rough, the conservation officer and at Birtwistle House said that the windows should be set well back within the stone surrounds, and both of them have the windows basically flush. And it upsets me. And I know that was a condition, and I wrote to Neil Watson and he said, yeah, these things need to be looked at more than they really are.
Yeah, well, you know my view on that, Sarah. I absolutely agree with you. My concern with that would be then that as long as you're building then outside of the conservation area, my concern would still remain that it's encouraging people not to. You've got to bear in mind that to be unkind to developers, it's least line of resistance. And if you think you're going to be given a harder ride on one approach, you take the other.
But going with what I've just said in terms of, for example, another paragraph on traditional building.
But you were saying in the conservation areas, and what I'm saying is that, I mean, would it not be sufficient to just insert, as with any proposals? But as with any proposals, they must be well evaluated, providing high quality design is achieved. Well, it doesn't quite make sense, that little bit, but you know, and be sympathetic to the existing building fabric. Yes. Surely that applies to everything. Is my where I'm coming from.
Yeah, well, we could just
not specifically to contemporary design.
No, I think if we add the paragraph on old buildings, because I'd like to see that anyway, to avoid the pastiche and to make sure that the details are properly considered, and then if we add the words "as with any," just to be clear that we would expect them to respect their neighbours, whatever they were.
So with any proposals, they must be well.
Yeah.
Sorry to labour the point on that, but
no.
I think it's that kind of detail that can be really, it can have unintended consequences.
Okay, all right. Shall I have a go at writing the paragraph on the older buildings in conservation areas? Because actually, also on the Lower Rough, it's got the problem that Birtwistle House has, where they've done almost the sort of corbels to support the gutters are almost like triglyphs on a Greek temple. They're nearly flat with the. I know. They've just done the minimum. They don't actually project, and they couldn't support anything. And I don't think that was clear from the plans at all. I suppose because you don't look at the well, I didn't look at the projections. I just saw that they were there. So I'll have a go at that. More homework for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Has anybody else got any other points to bring out about the design? And we can talk about it some more on the 30th when we'll have seen another iteration. Alice?
I don't know whether people saw my email about including the waterside Millennium Green.
I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah,
So if
yeah,
we can pop
got
that.
Also, we got the Cohen's local green spaces document, which shows the boundary of those green spaces. So if you can confirm that document is the latest and the boundary of those green spaces are correct, so we can use those boundaries in this report.
Gina, can you furnish Way with the latest version? David actually looked this afternoon. Michael's got it. Oh. Okay, so we haven't got the latest version.
Okay,
when will we have an updated version of the green spaces?
What's the reason that it's required?
He wants to put that map. What page is it on, Alice?
Yeah, double check all the green
69.
spaces boundaries against this plan, which is September 2020. I guess it's not recent.
It's not 69 of that one, it's 69 of this one.
No, but I think, is he talking about
local green spaces? If I can share my screen so you probably can see.
Yeah, okay.
If you allow me to share.
One thing I would say, Alice, about your suggestion is that obviously there are lots of green spaces there. So just picking out that one there of the Millennium Green, we're looking at proper parks, aren't we, there?
There's also
Sorry, I can't share the screen because it looks been disabled.
We haven't got the end of it.
Anyway, you probably you know which report I'm talking about. It's called Local Green Spaces, produced in September 2020. It says a technical assessment in support of Neighbourhood development plan. So I think the boundaries of green spaces in this report is relatively clear. And so we can double check all the green spaces in our report to ensure in line with these documents.
There it is.
I think it's so small that I wouldn't put any captions on at all. No, it's so small, and there are lots and lots of little green blobs here and there. We've picked out arbitrarily a couple of parts where all this harm is grey.
Which is a bit odd.
We may as well just have no captions on at all.
She's already published it. Oh, you've got to put your thing on.
Yeah, the map shown on page 69, figure 68, actually includes all open spaces in Colne, not just local green spaces, whereas the technical assessment, of course, is just the local green spaces. So my suggestion would be to leave figure 68 unaltered, because that's mapping all the main green spaces. But of course, what we're not saying through the neighbourhood plan is every space is a local green space.
No.
So the local green space technical assessment probably only covers 20 of those. 20 of those at most.
Yeah, I just want to double check which boundaries are correct. So I assume the boundaries in your report is the latest and more accurate version. Because on the page 69 it says the boundary of Bull Grove Park. This doesn't show the whole of Bull Grove open space, which extended further east.
Yes.
So, and I got that boundary in the Colne local green space report, but not from the CAD OS map. That's why I'm asking and whether your version of local green spaces boundaries are more updated and correct.
I think apart from two errors that David's pointed out this evening, the boundaries would remain be unchanged from the September, October 2020 version.
Okay, that's fine. I'll check and see. I'll ensure the boundaries in line with the local green space report. Thank you.
So are we going to?
I'm lost. Does that mean that, for instance, that using the example of the Ball Grove green space there, does that mean that alters or not? Because I've only got this.
Yeah, I don't think it does. I don't think it does alter.
In front of me, obviously.
I don't think it does alter. I think what has been suggested is that we remove all the captions because we've arbitrarily just picked some at random out, and they aren't the local green spaces even, they're parks. And there are loads of them, and we haven't labelled them at all. So I could see why Alice said we'll put the Millennium Green in, but really, if we just took I think David's right, if we took all the captions out.
I'm not talking about captions though, I'm talking about the green blobs on the plan. It's not anywhere near big enough on Ball Grove to cover the green space that there is at Ball Grove, for example. And I think somebody else has made the comment, I think it might have been Jerry,
Probably.
that some other nature reserves weren't included. So surely they should be within the green blobs that we're showing.
I thought
if we're showing all the green blobs in Colne.
all of that in Laneshire Bridge? Haven't we had this conversation?
No. We have an area shown on one of our maps, whichever, on our main map in the neighbourhood plan, which shows a much bigger area than that. I'm sure.
Yeah, sorry. But the green space one, we are showing the open space, which is used for for amenity. We on page 31, we have another plan shows the wildlife side, ecological green spaces. So on that plan, page 31, we shows the local nature reserve. So one is for landscape for people, another one is for wildlife. So that's two different, two different group of users even. So one for people, another one for wildlife.
Are you happy with that explanation, Michael? Yeah? So I think, I think what we do is we do take off the captions on page 69. And these are much bigger spaces. And I notice that this one here, what's that at the very, very bottom? You'd think it would be the Lenches, but it's not a local nature reserve. And it's not Greenfield Road. Have you got page 31, Alice? Do you want to point? Page 31, south.
Yeah.
They're all big blobs, but they don't have captions. Well, they don't all have captions. And this bottom one, that is the nature reserve at Ball Grove, isn't it? But that one.
The Ball Grove area shown is the park area, not the nature reserve.
It's the same shape as the other one, isn't it? Yeah, I'm very grateful that we're looking at this, actually. I don't think that bottom blob necessarily is a thing. Gib Hill at the moment isn't a local nature reserve, of course. It is a biological heritage site, but it's not a local nature reserve.
It looks like it's only part of what is Gib Hill, or next to Marsden Park Golf Course. That bit at the very south there.
Also, the pink area, that's the lower rough, has been built on.
Yeah.
Sadly, no longer settlement character.
Yeah, I think this information all from OS map, which from the local authority.
Yes.
So I don't mind if you think that's nothing to do with your.
Well, I don't think there's a local nature reserve here. We would like to have a local nature reserve here, wouldn't we? We'd like it to be Gibb Hill Local Nature Reserve. But we don't have one there, and so therefore I don't think we can include it. And I think that Paul is absolutely right. The Ball Grove one isn't the nature reserve, it's the park.
Will it come out of updating the documents?
On the Colnes local green space, the report which I mentioned, the reference to this green space, it says LGS6, Oak Grove Park and Nature Reserve.
I don't think it's the nature reserve, I think it might just be the park.
Right. Okay, doesn't matter. I think I can send back this report, and then you can reply to me, confirm.
Okay.
Which way you want to go? You want to include it as?
Well, we definitely want to. We definitely want to include the Ball Grove Nature Reserve because it absolutely is a nature reserve. The piece of wannabe land at the extreme south, we'd like to include it, but we can't include it because it isn't a nature reserve.
Okay, I can take that. Okay. So I understand. I can take that out. Yeah, that makes sense. That's fine. Okay.
No, I've lost it now. Jean,
that's it.
Right. Okay.
Sarah, I can give you the correct delineation of Ball Grove Local Nature Reserve, which goes right up to the main road now.
Yes.
We have
Jerry,
extended it.
Could you share this with Gina and me and Way, and at least we can solve the Ball Grove conundrum?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mike. Oh, could you include Mike as well?
Yep.
Right.
I think with the boundary where it is, I think David Clegg once mentioned it before, and he said that only part of Ball Grove is within Colne, and I think the other bit there is within Troden.
That would clearly show on the map, because we've got our boundary round. So yes, there'd be stuff outside it, but we should come right up to the boundary. There should be all of that should be Ball Grove. So hopefully Jerry can make that obvious, and there'll be some outside our boundary that doesn't really bother us.
I think we'll even see that. That's
the
green that we show at Ball Grove on our neighbourhood map. It's big and long.
And some of it's not in our boundary though, isn't it?
All
of that's in our boundary. Right. Okay.
The green area, as exists on the ground, continues over to the east of that into
Okay. Paul, just for safety, just for belt and braces, could you email it to us? And we'll just check that it exactly matches Jerry's. Okay.
I know mine is correct because I did the Ball Grove management plan.
I'm hoping that they exactly match, Jerry. I'm just, I don't want them not to match. And also that they match on our green spaces document. Okay. Are there any other design code concerns, perhaps deeper thoughts before we have our meeting on the 30th?
The only question is, when are we next going to get the iteration then?
We're hoping to get that next week.
Pressure on Way there.
You were saying the 25th?
Yeah, next week, I say.
The 25th. So
yeah.
I'm going to take lots of photographs over the weekend. Way's not working tomorrow anyway. Gina's going to take the bank across the road. I'm going to write a paragraph on old buildings in the conservation area and things that we care about. We're going to add some new words to the things on contemporary buildings. We can, I'm not really, maps aren't necessarily my thing. I will confess, I would much prefer other people to check the maps. Okay. And we're going to remove the captions. Is Jonathan going to do maps? Oh, good. Good. Okay. So we're all going to do that, and we're going to do it before Monday to get it to Way, so he's going to get us the next iteration by the 25th, then we're going to meet and talk about it again on the 30th. Yeah? I'm going to give all these bits to Gina because I think I've
So we get it on the
spoiled her.
25th.
And I'm holding on to this bit, which I'm taking home with me. You have to print that again, page 58. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Way. We know where we're going with it. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, speak later. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so item 10, work still to be completed. I thought about a piece of work that we've not done and we've not considered. It's not massive. So I have finished all but the interior of the little theatre of all of those buildings, and I had a lovely afternoon writing about Alkincoats, history of Alkincoats, and people who wanted to plant green gauges against heated Georgian walls. Actually so interesting that I think that you should feature it on your website somewhere else, because I think lots of people would be interested in cucumber growing Alkincoats, not least David Clamp. So that's all finished. And then when I was finishing off all of that and sending it triumphantly to David, I thought, wait a minute, we haven't written to the people that own these buildings. So we haven't written, I mean, lots of them know we're doing it anyway, but we haven't written to Holy Trinity Church. We haven't written, and so we can send you this tomorrow, the blurb and the pictures for each of these. Yeah. So it's Holy Trinity Church, it's the Lidgett Cottages, so actually that's quite a few. It's the Little Theatre. We own that. I think we can say that we already know about it. Bethel Chapel. And Primmett Primary. And
what about the heritage streets?
Oh, I just honestly, I mean, the heritage streets.
Lancaster Street.
No, the heritage streets honestly are a bit of a chimera. I have no idea why they were ever called heritage streets. They have no heritage buildings bar one on the heritage streets. All you've got are ridiculous pastiche, faux Victorian lanterns, which look incongruous and are the wrong size, and then really good quality paving. So really, what the heritage streets are just excellent paving. And I basically said that in my description. I've shown the paving, and then I've shown a lot of not even special houses, and said, but look at the paving. And actually, I think it's Lancaster, Grosvenor Street. It's even got shonky paving, really, if I'm honest. So the heritage streets have only got one paragraph saying great paving, shame about the buildings. So, so I don't think we should write to the buildings, because the buildings aren't focused on in the so-called heritage streets. So yes, so if we write to you with all of those as like a separate piece of A4 tomorrow, then you can write to all of those people, and then we've consulted them, haven't we? But we've both forgotten about it, haven't we? Yeah. So that's that done. And then David has got to collate all of that into the main document, which is no small task.
I have one question for Michael, mainly this one. Obviously, the green space document has almost like a history of development of the document. This one doesn't at the moment. It just has, this is what it is, here's a list, here's the details.
Oh.
Do we need to do, here's the original list, here are the additions, removals, etc., and here's the final list? Do we need to do that journey or not?
I don't think that's necessary, no.
Thank the Lord.
Right.
Because I couldn't remember.
At the end of the day, obviously, if you're going to write to individual owners, some of these, may object, so you may take them out. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to demonstrate is to whoever examines the plan that these buildings, features, whatever they may be, have a heritage value, and that you have assessed that in an appropriate manner. And my view is, what you've already done is fit for purpose. So I don't think there's any need to show an audit trail in this particular instance, no. I think it's a different argument for that one, because what we have done there, a national policy is quite clear that local green space designation is not suitable for all open spaces. So I think there is a difference. Things either have a heritage value or they don't. Whereas with the local green spaces, you know, and we've had to come back to it at this committee on more than one occasion. With the local green spaces, there is a certain amount of you know, judgment has to be exercised, and I think what that helps show is that this is how that judgment's been exercised. We've gone from a very long list, we've narrowed that down, we've consulted, we've revised the list, we've consulted again, and we revised it subsequently. But but I think it's important to be able to show that we've been able to make planning judgments on which ones qualify as local green spaces, whereas I think the non-designated heritage assets, it's a different thing. They either have a heritage value or they don't.
Okay. Okay. So, what work needs to be done on the valued green spaces then?
The local green spaces needs updating to add in was it? I'm trying to remember what it was now. Was it Essex? Decided Essex Street. There are some inaccuracies in the original version. David's pointed out a couple of mapping issues. It needs updating to take account of the changes in paragraph numbering for national planning policy. And it needs the conclusions rewriting. So it's fairly minor stuff, really, to be honest.
I think it would be really great if you could crack on with that. You know, thinking about our cascade to the councillors, you know, if we can over the next couple of weeks, let them have this, let them have the list of non-designated heritage assets, let them have the green spaces, let them have the marketing, why you'd want to live in Cone document. If we can give them all of that background, they'll be so much more informed, and we'll make sure that all of these details have been looked at by all the councillors well in advance of Christmas. So I think we'd really appreciate that while we're cracking on with these other things. And in terms of the main document, which presumably will be the very last document that we'll finalise, how's that coming along? Obviously, the viability's got to feed into it.
Same answer as last time, really. I've continued to work on it, and latest revisions I've made to the design policy to take account of the design code. So that's been redrafted. I think the one that, even if you set aside the viability, I think the one that probably needs looking at the most will be the housing policy CNDP 6. And David mentioned that there's a new information on local plan 2. Now it'd be interesting to see how
I don't think that there is new information on local plan 2.
No? There is the Pendle version, isn't there?
There is.
That is the version we've got about. That has the 240 target, and it has the overall target of 636 across the borough for 9 years, of which Cambridgeshire is 12.
But we do not think that's going to be adopted.
They probably don't, but that is the council's latest version. We're going to give them a document. That's what we should probably say.
Right, well,
There might be another version in January.
anyway, I think that's the main policy that needs looking at. I think everything else is sort of the tweaking of things. one thing we've got to factor in terms of the revision of the plan itself, and I've just written down all the background documents, and I think I had 13 background documents before I got to the plan.
Yeah.
So there's quite a lot to assemble there, but the plan itself is how we timetable that with the health check.
That was my next question. You knew.
Because I think without getting the health check out of the way, then we can't really proceed to submission.
No.
So my thinking was whether we revise the plan as best we can,
Yeah.
saying to whoever's doing the health check,
Mm-hmm.
this is a draft, this we know is a draft, but the part of the reason we requested the health check is what do you think of it as it stands,
Okay.
so we can make changes ahead of submission.
Okay, so when do you think we'll be able to go for that?
Well, I think we can probably sort of knock things into shape sort of 2-3 weeks, but I still think there's some work to do on the housing side of things. But yeah, 2 to 3 weeks, I think we could hopefully knock that into shape. But
And they promise us they'll crack on with it. So we've got their number.
Yeah, which would allow us then to get all the other background documents together.
Okay. And dribble them out to the councillors for extra input.
Yeah. One thing I have chased and I've not had any luck is the strategic environmental assessment.
Mm-hmm.
There was never any formal response from the Environment Agency. I've chased them again, but drawn a blank. I just wonder whether it'd be better coming from the town council, and whether there's a bit more oomph than it just coming from me.
The regional woman for the Environment Agency lives in Bridge. Perhaps Paul can go and knock on her door.
I've never found them be a problem before, but they never replied originally.
Do you have a contact?
There's a contact email to use, but I've never had a response.
Could you share that with Gina?
Yeah.
And if necessary, we'll go and knock on the door of the woman in Bridge as well. And obviously, I'll be happy to look at the wording of that in terms of urgent, required, and all of those kinds of words that we need to put in, so that we have done our best, and if they still don't respond, we can submit our last correspondence with them. Okay, so there's still loads to do. Oh dear. So, you're going to do your best updating all the bits, and in 2 or 3 weeks, so i.e. before Christmas, we will be able to submit for the MOT check.
I think that's the only way we're going to progress, because
we are progressing every single week.
But what concerns me is that there are so many things going on.
Yeah.
As I said, I've written them down. There are 13 background documents before I even got to the plan. The most essential out of all of those is the plan itself, and I think we need to progress that.
With me as well, so I can make sure that
Well, I can go through them now if you like.
well, if you just pop them on an email.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I may have missed something.
Oh God. Oh dear. Right. Okay. So, is that everything we need to discuss in terms of things we need to do? Yeah? Happy? Well, happy as we can be, given we've still got a lot to do. Okay. So the main items for the next agenda obviously are design code, iteration 3, and speaking to Dave Chapman and talking about how we're taking that viability forward. And David and I will have been to P&R by then, so we'll be able to give you the latest from Pendle in terms of where they're up to with their local plan part 2, which obviously does affect this. The two are interlinked. Okay, and we're hoping for the 30th, but it might be the day after. And thank you. Oh, go on, Jonathan.
Gina, I sent you an email. I spotted something on that design code document, which I think needs feeding back.
Okay.
It shows a area of Colne identified as commercial and employment area, but there's quite a lot of residential in there. So mainly to the south of the town, running from probably the cemetery down to Asda.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of houses there, some of which are but the open countryside. I just think we need to be careful about how maybe just slightly redefining the boundary there. But
Okay.
I've sent it as a memoir for the morning, just before I forget. Yeah.
Okay. Kevin.
Yeah, kind of throw my half pennyworth in. I just noticed whilst we stood in this, in the viability study, we had CDNP 6, page 9 and 38, Cotton Tree Road, and it should be Cotton Tree Lane. As far as I know, anyway.
Yeah.
And it should be CNDP, not CDNP as well.
Okay.
Made a mistake.
Did they?
Points the three bullets.
Ah. Okay. You could make a note of that. They've got their initials in the wrong order. Okay. If that's everybody happy, yes. Otherwise, we must go away, do more work. We're nearly there. We just need to stiffen our sinews. And at least we've got some documents signed off, and we should be pleased about that. Thank you very much, everybody. It's not a long final lap, it's just that the final lap hurts the most.
At least we're not going to take it by a penny
Stop it! I told Gina something this afternoon. I went on one of those Neighbourhood Plan Champions course webinars, and there was this bloke,